Okay, so for a while now, of all the next generation characters of the Naruto-verse that are a part of the Boruto Naruto Next Generation storyline, one of the characters in particular that I found to be one of the most interesting was Naruto's daughter, Himawari, especially ever since we got the special of Naruto's induction into becoming the Hokage, when we got to see that she had the capability of, activating Byakugan and essentially had latent, dormant power. I was like, okay, she's kind of like the Gohan of this series, like how Gohan in Dragon Ball used to, whenever he would get mad, and still to this day, he gets mad and power comes out that he never knew he had. Himawari demonstrated that ability in the Hokage inauguration ceremony, and this episode 126 of Boruto, yet again showed that, especially when we get down to the time skip, Himawari might be very, very important and very vital to things because she is no joke. I mean, even this episode clarified, she was able to, even though it was by surprise, take out her father and even Kurama in Naruto. So definitely a very interesting character. Let's talk about it. Whether Facebook, Twitter, or the two, make sure to steer clear, cause I'm coming through like... Okay, so with Boruto Naruto Next Generations episode 126, it was basically an addendum to the Uroshiki revival arc. Obviously, he kind of ran away and was defeated in episode 125, but we still had Shukaku basically making his way to Naruto's household, and basically we got to see him interacting with humans. Now, I felt as though, despite the fact that this felt like a one-offer episode, it wasn't really like a grand scheme of things type of deal. There was a lot of interesting tidbits for this episode. Of course, the involvement of the tail beast, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, Himawari and whatnot, but I thought it was kind of interesting to see, aside from Kurama, that Kurama's been with Naruto obviously from Jump, and he's been living in the Uzumaki household, but to see a different tail beast kind of get an insight into what humans are like when they're living in their just normal environment and kind of in a peaceful and loving household. So being able to see Shukaku in that environment and kind of how he would respond to it and his reactions was definitely something interesting. Again, I felt as though, even though this was like, kind of like I said, an addendum to the Uroshiki revival arc, this one was pretty entertaining and also kind of important for Himawari's character down the road, because one of the things is that when she gets mad, she gets angry about something in particular, she goes and loses it and obtains Byakugan and kind of can't even remember it, because in this episode, Shukaku, one of the things is, because he's always had that rivalry with Kurama. If you think about it, he's the tail beast with the least tails, he's the one tails, and Kurama is the tail beast with the most tails, the 9 tails. So they've had their rivalry for a long time, but just this episode seen in general, how Shukaku, even though you could argue, yeah, there's to a certain degree like a ridiculousness to it, like Shukaku's in this pot and like he's, just this mini chibi thing where he's supposed to be this giant monstrous, thing of carnage, but people forget that at the end of Naruto, one of the things that happened was the tail beasts, they weren't necessarily domesticated by any means. I mean, this episode showed just that they do what they want. Like, there was a couple of, I think there was 3 tail beasts in total that didn't want to show up to the little meeting that Naruto held, but for the most part, a lot of them, they let go of their hateful ways. I mean, Kurama, his yin and yang was separated, and the tail beasts in general, just kind of remembering the Sage of Six Paths and seeing how Naruto united everybody and was really riding for them, they kind of calmed down on those hateful ways, including Shukaku. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Shukaku, if he was in his big ultimate form, when he's a giant monstrous beast, I don't think that he would be necessarily all cuddly and nice, but just seeing him a little bit showcasing that Naruto did change even the tail beast, where he's there bonding with Himawari, and Himawari's there like, oh, he's so cute. And it was a nice callback to episode 93, where Himawari got the plushie of Shukaku, because she couldn't get the 9-tailed plushie because it was sold out, but she got the plushie of Shukaku. It was a cool callback, but also great in diving more into Himawari's character and her latent abilities. Because in the episode, in case you missed it, or just a refresher, Shukaku basically, he starts plotting like, how am I gonna get Kurama back? Because at the end of the day, Kurama, plays him and whatnot, and he's always just had, again, that animosity toward him. And one of the things is, upon listening, he finds out that Himawari was able to knock Naruto out by surprise. So of course he starts concocting a little scheme to get Himawari alone. And what I found interesting is, okay, we got a little more insight into what happened that day at the Hokage inauguration ceremony when Himawari knocked Naruto out. She doesn't even remember. So right there, it shows that she loses it, doesn't remember what happened and obtains the Byakugan and becomes an incredible, strong little girl. Because in this episode, when she's going to save Shukaku, because, you know, there was some kind of like whatever chill slice of life feeling stuff. Obviously they're watching Shukaku, although I would argue, why are you leaving the one-tailed beast in the hands of Boruto and his little sister that is like probably 6 years old? Like, what is going on here? I think that was a little bit ridiculous. Like, yeah, you know, they have a bond. Like, regardless of what, you don't leave something like that, especially when you got Urashiki Otsutsuki and who knows what else out there that could come and try to capture Shukaku. I don't think this Genin and his little sister are the best people to be watching Shukaku. But nevertheless, when, you know, Shukaku gets basically grabbed up and they try to throw him in a dumpster, one of the key elements was seeing how Himawari just sprung into action when she realized. It's definitely something that triggers in her emotions, because she thought like, yo, Shukaku was about to die, and that's when she kind of snapped into, okay, her Byakugan came on, she was able to jump up there and grab, she was able to use the Byakugan, of course, and see what was going on and find Shukaku in all the rubble, but also jump up there and grab him. But once her emotions calmed down, then she kind of snapped back into reality and her Byakugan went away. So there's definitely latent ability within this little girl that could prove very vital down the road. Because just imagine we get the time skip, right? And obviously I don't want to spoil for people that aren't reading the manga, but imagine she gets pushed to a point where she actually decides, you know what, I gotta start training like a shinobi, and she just leaves behind like that kind of childlike life that she's had. Which, don't get me wrong, it's dope to see that Naruto's family gets to enjoy the fruits of his labor, all the hardships that Naruto went through, to see that his family gets to live a lax life, where one of Boruto's biggest concerns is, man, I don't get to spend that much time with my pops, and Himawari gets to be a little girl. It's been great, but after a certain point, you gotta imagine, especially if you've seen the first episode, that things is gonna get real, the village gets destroyed. Maybe at a certain point, Himawari decides, yo, I need to start taking things a little bit more, and you know, kind of grows up a bit. So her having that latent ability, if she could somehow tap into it and be able to use it whenever she feels like it, that would definitely help to boost the character, and I think that would make her one of the strongest assets. Like, these are the things that make me really look at, once again, the Boruto series, that there were quite a few different characters that, instead of making it Boruto Naruto Next Generations, the other characters could have been the main character, I guess you could say, or the star of it all. Because like, you got Sarada, that, you know, her internal struggles, and, you know, being an Uchiha, and Sasuke not really being around almost at all her whole life. You know, you got her Mitsuki, his whole heritage with Orochimaru and everything, very interesting. Even Himawari, the fact that she has these latent abilities, that she could kind of snap like a little female Gohan in a sense, I find that very interesting. That I think like maybe Naruto Next Generations could have even been about Naruto's daughter instead of Boruto. Now obviously they want to go with the boy because this is aimed at the shonen demographic, young boys or whatever, but I think that Himawari could have very well been the main character of this series instead of Boruto as well, because she is really interesting. When she loses it, she activates Byakugan. Give her a couple more years of training and whatnot, just imagine what she'd be capable of. So I definitely found with this episode it fascinating to see where Himawari's potential could lie, where it could go. I mean, obviously it's like, whoa, she got still a long way to go, because as soon as she grabbed Shukaku and her emotions calmed down, she snapped back. And I think that's also a product of the fact that they're not 100% Hyuga. Like, they have Naruto's bloodline mixed with the Hyuga bloodline, which is why they don't have those natural dull looking eyes that the Hyuga clan have, until of course when they activate Byakugan, they got the veins on them. They have normal blue eyes like their father, but if you look at, for example, with Boruto, how he has the Jogan, he doesn't automatically activate it. It kind of happens at like certain points when things get dramatic. Likewise with Himawari, when she loses it, she activates her Byakugan. So I think again that's a byproduct of them being half-breed, so to speak, which is a kind of, not a cliche, but in a way I guess you could say a shonen cliche of like, you know, the half-breeds sometimes are enabled with more ability than even the full-blooded ones because of whatever is mixed within them. So you definitely see in this episode that Himawari, a lot of potential. I thought it was cool to see the interactions again with Shukaku, seeing where his mindset is at. Also, one of the big things about the episode, a reunion of the tailed beasts. I thought that was freaking great, because let's be honest, in the Boruto story, their involvement has been very, very minimal. We barely see the tailed beasts. We don't know what's going on, to find out in this episode that they're basically roaming free. Like, the only ones that really inside of people is, I guess, the Eight Tails is inside of Killer Bee, Kurama's inside of Naruto, and of course the rest of them, well, besides Shukaku that he's in a little pot or whatever, they're actually roaming free. So to address that as well was kind of interesting, that nobody has tried to basically recruit them to their, I guess their nation to help out or whatnot, because we see even a couple of them, they're just running free. They didn't even want to be involved in the summon that Naruto had of all of them. So definitely was good at the very least to put them in there, because it's like, yo, what happened to one of the most important forces in the Narutoverse, the Tail Beast? Oh, well, they're just roaming free and they're actually enjoying their lives, which, again, that's a dope thing. And once again, a byproduct of everything that Naruto and company had gone throughout the Naruto series, that now even the monsters that were once enslaved and caged and all that, and basically were a part of this Jinchuriki experiment, are now able to just roam free. I thought it was a little silly how they were like, hey, why doesn't Kurama come out? He can't come out. Like, if he comes out, Naruto will die. Like, so I didn't understand. I mean, I guess the chakra version of him could come out in a way, but the fact that they kept on like, but, oh, why doesn't he come out? And Naruto describes, oh, he's always sleeping and grumpy or whatever. Like, no, he can't come out because you'll die. And so overall, Boruto Naruto Next Generation's episode 126 definitely felt as though for a one-offer, it was solid. It gave a little bit more insight into Himawari's powers. It showed the Tail Beast for the first time in a really long time. It showed Shukaku, and even at the end when he waves his tail at Himawari and Boruto to say bye, because, they were heading off with him, it just showed the advancement of where we've even come down to the Tail Beast, that they free, but they don't resent humans per se. Even though Shukaku was talking to Kurama like, man, these people drive me nuts, humans drive me crazy, but they don't feel that same hatred and resentment towards them that they once did. Even though, Himawari was walking around with Shukaku and all of that stuff, it seems as though their hearts have softened throughout everything that's happened. So again, just showing the results of what Naruto's done and how much he's changed even the most monstrous of hateful beasts in the world, that now they don't feel that way. But also I gotta say that I really am hopeful that once we hit the time skip, Himawari can control these powers, and if not can't control them, at the very least when she does activate Byakugan, she has some type of grasp of it and is able to use that to fight whatever foes come forward at the very least down the line where the time skip begins. Because this episode, it was hype. It was hype in terms of seeing Himawari jump into a little action. It was cool to see the Tail Beast. It was dope to see the interactions between Shukaku and Kurama. And yeah, this is why, again, I say, like, there's so many other characters that could have been the main protagonists of this series. And, well, we'll see what happens with Boruto as the time keeps progressing with the time skipping forward. But solid episode, and I'm glad that they had a couple callbacks as well to episode 93, because those were kind of like adorable, cutesy episodes that had a little bit of insight. Curious what you guys think about this though. For starters, do you feel as though Himawari's power, if she taps into it and is able to control it, that she'd be a better or stronger foe than even her brother? Or do you think that there's a possibility she could actually even be like, I wouldn't be surprised she could be a potential runner-up maybe after everything is said and done? Because you got to think, while Boruto doesn't really want to be Hokage, Himawari might want to be Hokage, so who knows, maybe if Sarada becomes Hokage one day, the next up could be Himawari. There's so many, obviously that's way down the road, but there's so much potential, especially with her ability, and the fact that when she gets that emotional and wants to save somebody, she jumps into action. That's a lot of traits of her father, that when he wanted to save somebody, he would jump in and whatnot. So Himawari, very interesting character in episode 126. I was digging it. But that's all I have for this one though. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links of course in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life, boy. Have an awesome day. Peace in. Enjoy the next ride, but I was the best ride. But I hope you know that